Gyatso doesn't have a range of infinite distance, so it's not bypassing Gojo's infinite.
So anyone that's read Bleach will understand what I'm about to say. Black Coffin is basically a sealing technique that distorts space and time, and it was a box that was surrounding Ichigo. This is what it looks like from the outside, and this is what Ichigo did to a space-time manipulation ability. After which, he transcended to another plane of existence, in order to one-shot an immortal Aizen. Now as for Gojo, even he himself was able to harm himself. But isn't the infinity always active? Well no, the mathematicians from Akutami's team literally concluded that Gojo can only defend himself with red or blue by changing the scale of distance. However, if he's preoccupied and using both red or blue in an attack like purple, he can no longer defend himself or alter the distance. And it's for this reason that he couldn't do the calculations to alter the correct distance, and he managed to hurt himself. And this is why he said, I like these results, because he had to calculate the distance. This is why the same mathematicians in their graphs describe Gojo's infinity as Gojo's world. Because he doesn't have an infinite space, he just alters the distance within his little world. And this is why when Sukuna cut Gojo, he only cut Gojo. But he wasn't targeting Gojo. He said anything that exists within that space, that world. And in the Japanese, they literally say that anything that exists within that spatial world will be halved in that spatial world. So this explains why the entire world, or space, or all existence was not cut in half. Because this panel right here is specifying Gojo's world. And that's what the interviews say as well. Akutami said the ability was based on Convergent Infinite Series and Achilles and the Tortoise. And if you just do a quick Google search, it literally says that it's a sum bounded by a finite number. So it's a finite little bubble of control that he has. He can only control it when he's actually using either red or blue to push or pull, altering the distance of stuff. So the moment that Gojo goes to use purple, he's dead. Ichigo and many other characters would severely speed blitz from the Bleachverse. But unlike Ichigo, Ichigo has some spatial manipulation hacks, including being able to cut people like Yuha or even Aizen. Yuha being able to overwrite his own death.
Cool. I don't see anywhere on there where it says it infinitely distorts space and time. Happy conveniently.
It doesn't say anywhere in any of these panels either that Sukuna was able to cut all time and space in existence as well. In fact, if you actually understood what I said, or if you actually had have seen Bleach, you would understand that this was an attack that affected all infinite space and time. Aizen destroyed Kototsu. Kototsu was stated to be the thing that governs space and time. This is why if you were eaten by him, you'd be spit out into anywhere in time. This form of Aizen was the same form that fought this Ichigo. This is a higher feat than Sukuna. Sukuna only attacked space. Space and time is a whole different level. If Gojo was stated to only be able to affect the space within his world, specifically Gojo's little bubble of control, which is like 100 meters. This is why it says when Sukuna went to cut all of existence, within that space, that world, they're talking about Gojo's little world. Didn't cut the universe in half, didn't span across an infinite distance. Show me a panel where it actually shows Sukuna cutting the entire universe in half. Now Yuha, because he absorbed the power of the Soul King, decided he wanted to destroy the universe, and almost every character in Bleach basically stated that this was going to be the collapse and the end of the universe. That's an infinite distance. This means he has to have an infinite amount of power to be able to harm a being like Yuha. And again, if you actually read Bleach or the novels, Soul King was a man who had transcended everything. Everything. This is why this event is not a metaphor. If you think it's a metaphor that the universe was going to collapse, you've clearly never seen anything else but Jujutsu Kaisen and you're extremely biased. Especially if you only get your information from Pinoy Pins. And you're coming into my comments saying, space and time equals infinity. My guy, you guys are all so slow. Where does it say that Sukuna cut space and time? He didn't even cut space and time and he still managed to cut Gojo. So if you put 2 and 2 together, cutting space and time is a better feat. Transcending everything in existence is a better feat. If you're on a higher dimensional plane of existence, that is a better feat. Destroying something that holds both space and time is a better feat. Destroying the thing that governs space and time is a better feat than Sukuna only cutting Gojo's world. He literally cut like a 50-meter bubble, because Gojo's ability is the ability to swap out any attacks that come within that 50 meters. But if you just cut the entire 50 meters all at once, like Hollow Purple, he can't defend himself. Especially if it's an attack that attacks space, or a spatial manipulation attack. Now Ichigo is so strong that after Yuha, who's now currently acting as the current Soul King who holds the universe together, if he fails, Ichigo is going to be the new Soul King. That's what's stated in the novels. And this also is stated at the end of the manga. And this video, the entire video that you made was the worst debunk ever. You didn't even address a single point. Imagine saying Ichigo doesn't beat Gojo. That's got to be one of the most dishonest statements on this planet.
example. I mean, how many Bleach fans know who use this statement religiously that is indeed a mistranslation? The reason why Ichigo is not able to damage Kenpachi is not because of spiritual energy, it is because of Ryatsu, which is spiritual pressure. About refinement. Spirit energy does not determine the outcome of a battle. Ryatsu does.
This so-called Bleach debunk was so bad that it basically just proved how many people only get their information from TikTok. Spiritual energy equals more control. The more you have, the more control you have. This is why the type of training that Ichigo had to undergo was the more life or death situations he was placed in, this would increase his spiritual energy. Because more increase in his spiritual energy will give him better evasion or better control over his abilities, therefore restoring his power. Unless you skip this entire arc, you wouldn't actually know that more spiritual energy equals more control. And at this point, at the beginning of the manga, they only used Deiryoku, which is the word for spiritual energy. Because Reiatsu was a made-up term only for Bleach. As you can see here, Reiatsu is literally spirit pressure. Deiryoku, on the other hand, comes up as one big word, which is spiritual power or spiritual energy. And at this point in the manga, they started using Reiatsu interchangeably with Deiryoku, so it wasn't a mistranslation. The more spiritual energy you have, the more control you have. So therefore, spiritual pressure would actually be influenced by the amount of spiritual energy you have. And this is why they use the term Reiatsu and Deiryoku interchangeably. This also explains why when regular humans touch Aizen, they get erased. This is why when Ichigo tried to attack Kenpachi, he ended up hurting himself. As you can see, he cut his hand and couldn't cut Kenpachi. And Kenny explains that it's because the weaker of the two will basically absorb the impact. And this is why the top tiers of the Bleachverse, the Soul King created the universe, he absorbed the Soul King's power, who was stated to have transcended everything. And if Yuha failed in his role as the current Soul King to hold the whole universe together, then Ichigo is going to take over that. And so it makes sense because basically all the top tiers in Bleach have an insane amount of spiritual energy, which also means they also have a insane amount of spiritual pressure, which also impacts their ability to control abilities. So yeah, this whole spiel basically just proved absolutely nothing, except that people didn't read from the beginning of the manga to the end and didn't understand why they started using Bleach only specific terms. Wasn't a debunk, wasn't a mistranslation. This was just bad.